Hey, everybody. It's great to have you here today at Fairygodboss Live, webinar here on how to upskill and grow your career for an AI-powered future. Hot topic. We're excited to have you join us, and we're going to just give people a few seconds to connect. While we're waiting, love to know where everyone's tuning in from. I'm starting to see that coming through the chat. It's pretty amazing. Many states, many places. We even have somebody from the Netherlands, Texas, New York, Colorado, Florida, Chicago. Awesome. Buffalo. Love Buffalo. So welcome to everybody from wherever you are, and we'll just pause a few more moments here. Right, Minnesota, in the house, Canada, that's where I'm from. So with that, who am I? I'm Jason Fox, the Chief Innovation Officer at the Muse and Fairygodboss. So the subject that we're talking about today is something I think about a lot. But before we get started, just a couple of announcements. The session will be recorded and shared via email with all registrants. So if you have to drop off or you want to take another look for whatever reason, you will have that opportunity. During the discussion, we really want to hear from you. So again, use the chat for more than just where you're from. We welcome your messages, comments, questions to the panelists, as well as each other. So now, without further ado, again, for those of you just joining us, we're here to discuss how to upskill and grow your career for an AI-powered future, and sponsored by our friends at Thomson Reuters. Quick disclosure, I used to work for the Reuters news agency. Thomson Reuters is dear to my heart. It's a great place to work if you're interested in all sorts of amazing things that they do, as well as meeting people from around the world. That was one of the funnest things that I enjoyed. It's truly a global company. For those of you who do not know, Fairygodboss is the largest online career community for women. Millions visit for career connections, community advice, and intel into how companies treat women, as well as virtual events like this, which is really a core part of our value proposition. So we're thrilled now to welcome two leaders from Thomson Reuters that you see with me here, Sweta and Michelle. Before you dive in, would you each just take a moment to introduce yourselves? Because we'd love to hear what's going on in your life, personally and professionally, as well as what you do in your role today. So why don't we start with you, Sweta?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jason. My name is Sweta Patel. I am a talent development solutions lead at Thomson Reuters. I've been working here just shy of 3 years, based out of Denver, Colorado. So my job really is focused on our internal AI and skills strategy, really thinking about how do we get our employee base using AI effectively to improve our workflows, and also as a result of using AI, how are those jobs changing? And therefore, what skills really become top of mind and become most critical for success in the future, and making sure we're transforming into that skills-based organization to really empower our talent for the future. Personally, in 2023, I got engaged and bought a house in the span of 8 days. So my life outside of work is really wedding planning and home renovations at this point.
Awesome. That sounds great. I love Colorado. Done some hiking there. We'll connect another time on that, but great to have you. Michelle.
Yes, Jason. Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm responsible for our marketing strategy lead within the Thomson Reuters Institute. So that is a part of the Thomson Reuters business that does market research and thought leadership. So we generate insights through interviews, surveys with professionals out in the market. So I'm here to kind of give you their view as well as my own personal experience. So I can draw on a little bit of data as we're working through this conversation, if I remember it all accurately. So within the Thomson Reuters Institute, we're here to help this conversation debate. We analyze market trends. We give guidance to firms, organizations that are tackling this wonderfully increasing complex AI environment. Personally, I am not planning a wedding. Done that, bought that t-shirt. I am looking forward to snuggling down in the winter. I live in the UK, so it's autumn here, not fall. And I have 3 small children and a passion for lots of sport, weightlifting and triathlons. So I'm looking forward to spending some time indoors at the gym and snuggling on the couch with my children.
Awesome. That sounds good. We have 3 time zones represented. I'm just realizing that. So, and many more, I think, across the community that's joining us today. So again, thank you for everyone tuning in. Just a reminder one more time for those of you joining, we will be answering questions that come through the chat. So please submit those and we'll do our best to respond to as many as we can. So why don't we dive into it now? How do you, and this is for you, Michelle, I think you're going to take this one. How do you envision AI reshaping the job market and professional landscape over the next few years, especially for knowledge workers, which I know are core to Thomson Reuters and many other places?
Yeah. So we conduct a lot of research. We did a study earlier in the year called Future Professionals. And in that research, we have made the prediction, but based on data, based on evidence, and talking to people out in the market, there was 2,200 interviews that we did globally across the professions, that within the next 5 years, all professionals will have a Gen AI assistant. And I think that's already happening for some, might be scary for others, but it's going to happen. And that Gen AI assistant will function as a team member, and it'll handle, the boring, but also some complex tasks. It will use natural language understanding, and that kind of gives a whole world of opportunities, I think, for us as we talk about careers and progression and things like that. So the research showed that 85% of the market is predicting new and additional roles. There's opportunity for this change, this growth. You no longer come into a career and stay in that role and just work up the fixed ladder, and more widespread AI use kind of across the workplace. Recently, the conversation is shifting from what was, a concern about how it was going to impact the place negatively, but shifted now to redeployment of headcount, like a new apprenticeship model, and maybe even new lines of business for those able to really leverage those efficiency gains. And there are lots of productivity and efficiency gains on offer, according to the research. Specifically for knowledge workers, I see a shift from doing the kind of managing, ensuring accuracy of those AI systems, and making those strategic decisions based on AI-driven insights. And that's what's really kind of personally exciting for me.
Yeah, I think that I just want to make a point for those of you who saw the link on the events page, and it also just came through the comments to the report that Michelle's referencing. It's really fascinating. I'm not going to get into it here because there's a lot to cover off on, and we will be talking through some of that today, but definitely worth a look. So thank you, Michelle, for that setup. Can you share, Sweta, maybe we can go to you. Can you share any examples specifically of how AI has impacted your own work or what you've seen at Thomson Reuters more generally?
Yeah, it's had such a big impact on my work. And if I had to kind of categorize the way it's helped me in work, it's across 4, which are speed, volume, quality, and experience. I write quite a number of executive briefs and papers for my role. They're using AI, I'm able to do that not only faster, but at a much higher quality at the end of the day. And in general, my experience at work has improved because I basically always have an AI coach available to me to give me feedback on my thoughts, on my ideas, on my writing. Before, I would have to rely on the availability of colleagues, right, in real time to provide that feedback. Now I can have that AI coach do that with me. And if I still want that feedback from my colleagues, I'm going to them after having already refined my work. And you're just able to scale and take on more volume to some extent. So, recently I created a couple chat features at work to help our team redefine job specs and identify skills for various jobs. And it's a piece of work that can be really daunting, super time consuming otherwise, that we're able to significantly reduce the time that we're spending on that for more mission critical activity.
Yeah, one of the things I love about the report is it leans into not only all the productivity gains you can make, but what do you do with that time, including, focusing on things beyond work, and maybe we'll cover off on that. But over to you, Michelle. Same question, examples of AI impacting your own work, or Thomson Reuters from your vantage point over in the UK?
Well, I'm definitely stealing the phrase AI coach, because that is what I use it for. I've just never referenced it as that. So that's a beautiful, I think, succinct description of how I use it. So we established I'm in the UK, but I am work from home. I'm a remote worker. So I spend the day on my own. No need to get the violins out. But I do. And having Thomson Reuters has built its own private version of ChatGPT and some other AI tools. And I genuinely use them daily. I'm not like pretending I'm genuinely not here. I use it as my Gen AI assistant. I use it for exactly what Sweta's just talked about. I use it for summarizing documents. I really find it useful for that. I no longer work in a team where as a leader I've got 5 apprentices or juniors, and I can just quickly ask them for a summary via a document. But AI can do that for me. It can even talk it to me whilst I'm doing other jobs. So I can definitely get more done in my working day, even on my lunch break when, I am a home worker and I may be hanging the washing up or doing the washing up. I can still continue to use AI in those parts of it. So the scale and the volume that Sweta talked about, definitely. I have also used it for analyzing vast amounts of data and kind of looking at trends. Whilst I work in the market research business, I am not a market researcher. I'm not a data scientist, but it does give me those insights that I would get from a team of data scientists quickly and beautifully 24/7. Really, that is one of its like kind of huge benefits, because whether you work for a small organization or a big organization, we all know challenges of getting time with a mentor or a senior and the rest of your team, because we're all busy doing our own things. And I also use it for generating first drafts. Like, I really find that kind of useful. If I'm getting much better at prompting, I can get some kind of content out. I can ask it for options. How better could I write this? How could I get the attention? I genuinely use it for options, not asking it a direct question. And then I'm able to use my human abilities to kind of filter the one that I think and I know would be better matched to the audience that I'm talking about. So just that extra support for those admin tasks. And it genuinely, as you talked about, Jason, it frees up my time to do kind of higher level, more creative work, which I find more fulfilling. And I think lots of other people do.
Yeah, it's really interesting. As you were talking about the prompts and generative AI and so on, I was thinking there's a real skill around that, and it does take some time, and the best way of learning is really to do it. But thank you for sharing those tips. So I see a lot of questions coming in.
To help you with prompts. Apologies for talking. But you can ask it to help you with prompts. People get nervous about it. They watch webinars, but you can ask it to help you with a prompt as well. So yeah, go and have a play.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Thanks. So I see a lot of questions coming in. I just want to mention to the community, we are going to do a couple more for our panelists, and then we will take some from you. So let's keep going here if we can. If we step back a little bit and take more of a landscape view, Sweta, could we just talk a little bit about the specific skills that are increasingly valuable in an AI-driven environment? We talked a little bit about prompts a moment ago. You can build on that, or any other skills development that are relevant.
Yeah, I'll touch on some of the softer skills that I think are going to be more valuable moving forward. So starting off, I would say adaptability and growth mindset, right? That the world of work is changing so rapidly right now. So being able to embrace those changes and adapt quickly is going to be more important than ever before. And then speaking of, testing and kind of iterating, experimentation and curiosity at the end of the day, right? Being able to consider the art of the possible, being open to testing and experimenting and trying new tools and ways of working are just going to be so important to ensure that you are ready for this new environment that we're in. And in terms of keeping that skills development relevant, I think we need to start treating skill development as a professional imperative. This is no longer a nice to have. We have to be intentional about skill development. So carving out that time to hone your skills. We all need to be doing that regularly. And how that happens for you versus me, Jason, might look very different. But a few ways that I would suggest even starting is first, again, blocking off time for that skill development. Because guess what? If you're getting AI efficiencies in your workday, right, that's time that you can now block off for skill development. Having a candid conversation with yourself, be really honest and vulnerable. How much are you prioritizing learning today? Are you really thinking about how what skills are going to be relevant for your job moving forward? Do you know how that role is going to shift in the future? And what skills are you lagging in, and skills that you may want to grow in order to succeed in that future state of that job? And then talking to both your manager and your frequent collaborators to understand your current gaps, your current strengths, and just thinking about what skills you want to grow in.
I referenced the report earlier, and there's a lot of good stuff that we can build on there if you take a look. And so that's terrific advice, and I encourage you to look at that report again and for additional tips. For you, Michelle, could you give us your perspective on the same question around what you're seeing is the most valuable skills that are in demand now?
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with Sweta. It's that the human in the loop, human skills. And there's a beautiful chart in the report if you kind of go there. But if I'm recalling the ones that made most impact on me when I saw the research, it is adaptability that we obviously mentioned, problem solving, creativity, resilience, we've obviously kind of talked about, emotional intelligence, just that the real audit of yourself, which you can do with your manager if you're kind of confident enough. And another option would be to look at the role description and the skills needed for your future role, even a role outside of your organization, just to even keep on par these days is requires kind of skill development. And audit that. What is kind of needed for your role outside the business, for your next kind of role, and look at those. And then I think for leaders, for teams, there's no need to be good at it all because it can be quite daunting. But with your current skill set, be confident in what you're doing, continue to grow in the areas you see grow. But there are some things we're all not good at. I'm not going to list mine here, but, I do have them. We all have them. And I think that's fine. But a team and a manager needs to build their team with that diversity of skill set. If you've got a team of resilient people, not everyone needs to be resilient, but a couple that have got emotional intelligence, so that when you're adapting or when you're in a project meeting, somebody is confident enough to maybe mention that we haven't thought about X, Y, and Z. Same with creativity. Some people are naturally creative, apologies. Some people aren't, but you kind of need both. So I would say don't be daunted when you're looking at the research, but do kind of look at it and do what Sveta's talked about, which is a kind of a self-audit. Make time every week for these things. I block out time in my diary. I will be honest, I don't always get to it. There are other priorities that kind of happen, but there is a kind of, a Thursday time that I've kind of blocked out every other week that is for kind of personal development, personal growth, and kind of a self-reflection. I think that's really, really useful. Also in the research, one skill that I was super excited to learn was becoming less important, because some are obviously becoming more important, but it's good to keep an eye on the ones that aren't so important so that you're not mentioning them and you're not wasting time, was a memory for facts. I thought that was brilliant, just in case that cheers anyone else up, but I'm very happy about that. I'm a list maker, I write notes, So the fact that my memory is not going to be a very useful skill in the future, I'm quite happy about as I continue to age.
Thanks for sharing that. On the report, a couple things that I was thinking about, which both of you referenced, is what a jump there has been in just a year in terms of leaders thinking how important AI is. And then also that, to what you were saying, Michelle, that we can't know all of it. And in many ways, it's probably the early adopters that are going to be doing upwards mentoring and sideways and so on. It is a journey, right? It does take time. And as you said, carving some time out for it, I think is really important because it is a rapidly evolving technology as well. So on to the next question. What tools, and I think Sweta, you're going to take this one, but what tools and resources does Thomson Reuters provide to help employees upskill for this AI-driven future we've been talking about?
Yeah, I love this question. I will say we're taking a really holistic approach to AI and upskilling. And it starts at the very top, right? Our company OKRs, first and foremost, reflect our commitment to leading in the application of AI with confidence and also empowering our employees to learn, to grow, and to thrive in this AI-enabled environment. And just to give a quick plug, as part of that commitment, we are expanding TR Labs, which is a subset of our tech organization that's comprised of engineers and scientists doing some really cool cutting edge work in the AI space. So if you are curious and interested, there will be a link to our career site in the chat. We're hiring for labs. We're also hiring for some other great roles as well. And if you want to know more about what it's like to work at Thomson Reuters, we'll also add our digital magazine, which is The Power of Purpose, to that chat as well. But to go back to your question, Jason, on top of our OKRs, right? Our tech team, and Michelle referenced this quickly earlier, we launched something called Open Arena, which is TR's safe, secure, and really user-friendly enterprise-wide large language model. It launched in 2023, and since then, it's only gotten way more impressive in what it's enabling our employees to do. So it allows any employee, doesn't matter if you're really, a coding expert, low code, or like myself, no coding ability, to really explore the art of the possible. You're able to use a chat feature, but you can also create tools to help yourself and your teams make work better. And on top of that, we've hosted competitions to really encourage experimentation, things like hackathons. We've also requested submissions of ways people have used AI to improve work for themselves. And then we have AI champions. So, Jason, you were kind of referring to this now, the early adopters, right? Across the org, across our different functions, acting as those change agents in the different functions. We're also investing in AI. So we've got a cross-functional group of folks focused on our overarching AI strategy. And that means using AI in-house. How do our employees use it to ensure that we're testing and licensing AI tools that can help augment our workflows and improve quality, experience, et cetera. But recognizing that AI is going to shift what skills are going to be the most critical for our people. We've been transforming into this skills-first organization with significant effort to integrate skills into our various talent practices. I think our superpower at the end of the day is that TR recognizes that we run on talent. So to ensure that our people can experience development through learning, through connection, and through exploration, we launched our skills-first talent experience called Grow My Way. And we've been on the skills-first journey for some time. And leverage tools that use skill data to drive career development at Thomson Reuters, our HRIS's Workday. So, providing targeted learning recommendations, gigs, and mentor recommendations and opportunities. And we're just working to optimize that experience moving forward. We're hosting global learning days. These are dedicated times each quarter for all of our employees to focus on learning, on building their skills, and growing their careers. And we're going to continue to provide more experiences, including AI-enabled career coaching and skill exploration. So we're simplifying the experience to help our people find their next great opportunity to develop and do so in a personalized, simplified, and tech-enabled manner.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. Do you have any jobs for me at the Tech Lab? It sounds like a lot of fun. So we're going to just turn our attention to the community here. We've got a couple questions. There's a thematic one around LinkedIn, resume, how to show your knowledge of AI. And I would love to sort of talk about that. And then paired with that is specific course recommendations. So maybe starting with the resume LinkedIn piece, which one of you want to have a go at that?
I will leave with our HR expert.
Yeah, I can start. So, I mean, LinkedIn's changed quite significantly, that platform in general, right? Now you're able to review what skills have been identified for a job that you might be interested in, but also you can add skills to your own profile. So what I would certainly suggest is folks really looking to see what are those skills that are coming up most frequently for jobs in your, in your industry or in the space that you're interested in, and seeing if there's a correlation between that and the skills that you've applied in your job, and making sure you're getting those onto your profile. More than ever, I would say also on the resume, really thinking about what are those skills that, again, are pertinent, and making sure those make it also onto your resume. In terms of LinkedIn Learning, it's such a fantastic platform. We use it at Thomson Reuters as well. Some great resources, especially if you're around looking to learn and develop around the AI space. They have some great introductory sessions as well into, what is generative AI? What is prompting? How do you prompt? To help make it a bit, if you are starting from scratch, to make it easier to get started.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. And I'm going to comment on something related to that in a moment. But first of all, Michelle, do you have the second part of the question? Are there specific, we heard about LinkedIn Learning. Is there a specific course that you've taken or you might recommend or heard about?
I haven't. I have done LinkedIn Learning when we've had our global learning days. I'm aware, I'm fortunate that I have that opportunity. My belief is just to make time to play. I think there's no kind of better advice than just to have a go. We talked about experimenting. We talked about being intentional. But I think AI is the new tech. I'm old enough to see other techs have come through in the kind of world of work. I promise when I started, I had to read the newspaper and translate it for my leaders. That doesn't happen anymore. Obviously, we have tech to do that for us. So it's always been there. We've always had to kind of change. But I think we just have to embrace the speed of change now. And that, I believe, just needs us to roll our sleeves up and have a go. So that would be my advice for everyone. I don't think there's any better qualification or anything out there, unless you're specifically wanting to be a data scientist or work in the labs. That's kind of slightly different. But you can ask AI what qualifications you need to do that. Just ask ChatGPT. No sensitive data required for that one. But that would be my only just go and have a go. Make time.
Yeah, that's hands-on is always the best way, I think, of learning. One that I do like is Google AI for Anyone. I think it's a really good way to step into it. You can get it formally credentialed for a few $100s if you want to display that on your LinkedIn as through edX. There's a number of other ones, but I've personally taken that one and got quite a bit out of it. Let's take another question and then we'll go back to the panelist. So one question that came in is there any negative impacts of using AI in developing and improving copy, resumes, cover letters? I think sometimes it's a little hard to know, right? It's gotten so sophisticated. Sweta, what do you think about that one?
I think it's great at first drafts, and I think Michelle mentioned that earlier on how it's great for using AI is fantastic for first drafts. However, that's always it should always be a draft. Anything you use, any content that you're developing within AI, using AI rather, you should be putting into your own voice, as the final submission. So, I think there's always. I would say, don't put in any proprietary or sensitive information when using an AI tool. However, getting feedback on your resume, it can act as that coach. You can assign AI a persona and say, hey, what do you think about my resume? Here's a job I'm applying for. Do you feel that I'm, appropriately showcasing my skills, my talent, my experience, etc. And you can even also ask it to interview you, right? At the end of the day, what questions should I be prepared for to answer based on this job description? So I think that there are, the value is significantly outweighs a risk, but at the end of the day, again, no private data should be inputted, and never use whatever ChatGPT or any of the other AI tools available to you as your final draft. Always make sure it's still showcasing your own voice.
I couldn't agree more, because there is sort of sometimes almost a robotic clinical voice that seems to come through. One thing I've noticed with generative AI is it uses a lot of past tense, and sometimes the sentences run on and some other things. So just be aware of that. So, at Fairygodboss, the community is somewhere around 99% women. And I would like to move to this question of women that are interested in coming into a career in AI. And we think of tech historically being dominated by males. Are there specific barriers to entry that they need to overcome, Michelle?
Yes, I think so. I think I hate to repeat myself, but I think it's about that willingness, intentionality to playing, and being curious. I think there is a known unknown that we want to get with what we can do. We want to deliver on what was been asked of us. We want to show what we're capable of. And I think embracing change, embracing these new technologies and being proactive, exploring will definitely kind of pay dividends. If you wait until you're asked, which I believe is a common female characteristic, not just for females, but it is a female characteristic, then you will potentially fall behind, and catching up, as we've talked about, it is going to be harder. So that continuous learning needs to be your focus, that kind of a change in mindset, if that isn't already yours. I'm not saying it is for everybody, and I think it would be, as the marketeer in the room, not the human resources specialist in any way, shape or form. We talked a little bit about using LinkedIn, using AI as your coach. I love the idea of the assigning personalities. If people don't know how to do that, go on LinkedIn Learning and learn how to do that. It's brilliant. But let's not get away from the fact that we need to sell ourselves. And I believe women aren't as good at that, or don't feel that's the right way. We tend to use we and team rather than I. So I think it's just getting back to remembering those kind of things, to market yourselves better, and it's putting your skills forward, and aligning those to what you believe you can add to the business, and believing in that.
How about for you, Sweta? Do you have specific recommendations for women that might be stepping into the field, and what barriers they might look to overcome?
I think it's just, and this is not specific to women, but just fear of the unknown and fear of messing up. I've heard from folks, internally, externally, around, what happens if I break it? You're not going to break it. Just give it a test, right? Start an experiment. Again, just be careful about not putting any personal or sensitive info in there. But just start an experiment. Just remember also, right, in general, generative AI is still pretty foundational in what it can do, but it's only going to get more advanced. And even just in the last year, we've seen significant advancements in the technology, and it's only going up from here. So there's ways for everyone to leverage it, right? Using, free tools that are available, and not every org is embracing it yet. But, to Michelle's point, way early on in this conversation, our research at Thomson Reuters supports that all professionals are going to have an AI assistant in the next 5 years. So better to get acclimated now and come along for that journey than try to get started later And if you're not in an organization that is embracing it and leveraging it, figure out how you can use it to augment your personal life. I mentioned really early on, I'm planning a wedding. I've been using AI to help me along the way with that. So if you're first concerned about maybe using it for work, right, for sensitivity, privacy reasons, how can you leverage it in your day-to-day? I've used it to help me figure out my weekly grocery shopping list by helping me first identify some recipes that I want to cook for the week and then coming up with that grocery list from there. So there's ways, think about the things that are mundane, frustrating tasks that you take on day to day and start there if you're feeling nervous about using it for work as the first step.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking as you were saying that, as one example, if you were tasked with writing your first business plan or something like that, great way to get kind of an organizational template. So there are so many different ways, and whether it's planning a wedding or planning your next trip, it's surprisingly good. It's not always perfect, to be sure, but it can be quite augmentative to whatever you are experience you're planning. So I think we'll just turn back again to our audience, and I see Emma has a question. So I will summarize that, which is to say, in her case, she has generative AI and prompt engineering certifications, but she's not sure what non-technical roles and job titles exist in the space for skills like that. So maybe Michelle or Sweta, either one of you can take that and speak to that for a moment.
Michelle, do you want me to? I can start.
Yes, could you take that? Sorry, I've got bad reception here.
Yeah, all good. Certainly not a prompt engineer myself, but I prompt every single day. So I would say those skills that Emma identified are kind of becoming part of everyone's jobs at the end of the day, right? So being a good at prompting has become an important skill, I would say, for basically every professional job that I've seen at Thomson Reuters, making sure our employees are able to effectively prompt to use AI effectively and efficiently to get that result, that best result as quickly as possible, has been really helpful. So I would actually challenge Emma, maybe think about, what is it that you're interested in and how can you leverage, prompting to make that work more efficient, improve the quality, get through more, improve, employee experience along the way as well. So certainly no longer, I think, a unique skill to any, given section. Maybe the proficiency might look different job to job, but in general, I would say prompting is kind of a skill that we're seeing across the board now.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, Michelle and Sweta, both of you have mentioned how important it is in your own daily lives. And is that something you're now specifically looking at when somebody applies for a role? Whether they have that kind of experience?
It's certainly a benefit now if folks...
Yeah.
Yes, I would say certainly if folks have experimented with AI, we are absolutely considering that as a major benefit, because we do, again, we have Open Arena internally, which is our proprietary in-house LLM, large language model. So it's certainly something that we look for, because anyone that's got some experience, you're going to have a much easier time at Thomson Reuters at the end of the day if you're able to leverage the basics of a large language model and prompt, and again, showcasing some experimentation history and some curiosity in leveraging these new tools.
I genuinely think it is a very useful skill. I think if you're very good at it, use it as your differentiator. But I wouldn't, for anyone that isn't, it wouldn't put me off. A willingness, enthusiasm, resilience, they're all skills, the human skills that will enable you to get the benefits and leverage AI for the best of your role, my team, the bigger business, the OKRs, the KPIs, whatever. So I think it's a person who's good at prompting probably has that those kind of behind the scenes skills, those transferable skills. But equally, I'd probably still be looking for those. And then we're early enough where you can still kind of train someone up pretty quickly if they're enthusiastic and willing.
Yeah, it's so interesting. There are so many different tools. If we just focus on generative AI for now, everybody knows about ChatGPT. In Silicon Valley, people love Perplexity. Certainly, it's hard to avoid Gemini. And then, of course, there are workplace tools such as U.com and others. And I guess the question, because this is coming in from the community, is do you have a perspective on whether free is enough? All these services have pro versions as well. Not sure if you played around with that, seen the difference or not, but maybe Sweta, you can offer us your perspective.
I say free is better than nothing at the end of the day, right? So yes, there are benefits, there can be incremental values you can get from using some of the, the paid subscriptions. However, there's a lot you can do with just the standard free options, because at the end of the day, this is where the power of the prompt, as we like to say, really comes into play. The higher quality your prompt is going to be, the higher quality your output is going to be. So getting to a place where you're really refining your prompts, really starting to have a conversation as well, right? So get to, to iteration with your AI model, you can see significant benefits from just that. There are some really great things you can do with certain AI capabilities if you do pay for subscriptions. For example, there's some, AI imaging tools, right? Where, if you pay for them, you're able to do a bit more in some instances. However, I would not say that you necessarily have to spend money on an AI tool in order to, get some of those benefits.
I would agree. Use free to exhaustion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Use free to exhaustion, I would say, before even kind of thinking about it. I've worked in large businesses where I'm fortunate to have a bigger budget for these things, but also a small organization where it's just not possible. And I've never felt constricted by that. So.
Yeah, I've noticed that you can kind of do a triage across several sources, and some of them are real time or more or less. Some of them have a little bit more dated information. And it's really interesting. There is not one size fits all, always use that one tool, has been my experience. And experiences will vary, as will the type of prompt you put in. So it's, but I absolutely agree with the fundamental premise that there's plenty enough free that unless there's a really strong business case for doing pro, I really don't think that's probably needed. So let's see now, going back to our panel at Fairygodboss, we have this tradition of asking our panelists of what have you observed that women do not feel comfortable enough bragging or taking ownership of. Maybe you could share your own personal or professional experience. It doesn't have to necessarily relate to the topic at hand. But Sweta, can you maybe start here?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm having trouble just getting the words out right now. So yes, I, certainly noticed this trend among, us women, not necessarily being willing to, openly share accomplishments and, quote unquote brag, right, about what we've done and what we're proud of. I think for me, right, not related to this topic directly, is just learning to trust myself along the way. Back in college, my family had a ton of expectations about what I should do with my career, and were very vocal about wanting me to go into the medical space. And I kind of just ignored the noise and said, you know what do I want to focus on? Where do I find my passion? What are the skills, for example, that really bring me joy to leverage every day? And that kind of is what got me into this career with human resources. And that kind of led me also then to taking on roles that I just didn't think or know that I could do, but decided to try anyway because I believed that I would figure it out and trusted myself to figure it out and contribute meaningfully. And because I decided to trust myself, I've had a really great career so far. I mean, I've had a chance to live in different states across the US. I got to live in the UK for a little bit, touch so many different projects across the HR universe, and taking on some really meaty, some pretty high profile and meaningful projects as a result of that.
Same question for you, Michelle, and thank you for sharing that, Sweta.
Yeah. I also hate this question because it's true. And therefore it shouldn't be. And I should stand up with my, hands on my hips and my legs apart and take a deep breath and remember all the good things and the amazing things that we've achieved. I'm very much a team player, so I love working with people. I love relationships and achieving something together. So I'm exactly the type of woman that you're referencing. On a personal level, it's slightly easier. So in September, I completed my 4th half Ironman. For those not familiar with triathlons, that's a 1.2 mile swim in a lake. It was a 56-mile bike ride across the hills of Northumberland. It was beautiful. And then a 13.1 mile run. So I can confidently say that even with 3 small children and a full-time job, that is something I probably should kind of brag about. And I don't. I go, oh, no, everyone can do it. You'll be fine. You just got to keep going. And I get told off often by what we would reference as my village. So my group of very closest friends, that is something impressive. And I would add to this question, if anyone is struggling with that, this is something you can't ask AI probably. They don't know your personal life. But ask people around you, ask your family and friends, ask that village. If you're struggling to brag and take ownership of things and add the I to the project, to the bit that you kind of made happen, the bit that if you weren't there wouldn't happen, sometimes it's good to kind of switch that kind of lens too. But I promise if you're struggling, then ask them over a cup of tea, over a glass of wine, whatever's your choice, and they will definitely help you with that.
That's great. That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that. There was a question that came in, so I think we'll just go back to this for a moment from our community. We've kind of covered this a little bit, but there's a specific question around, are you aware of any courses that you've found or you're aware of that are beneficial with respect to prompting? I've heard very clearly from you, Michelle, that the best way to do it is to try it. I would also just add on to that, and then we'll hear from you guys, that you could ask a generative AI tool this very question. But over to you, Sweta.
Yeah, there's definitely, and I've taken them. There's courses on LinkedIn about like the foundational. Unfortunately don't remember the exact name, but the fundamentals of Gen AI. There's a whole series of LinkedIn learning courses around Gen AI usage, and one of those sessions is around prompting. I recall it not even being a particularly long learning module either. So I would just say get onto LinkedIn Learning and explore and see if you can find some materials around prompting. Everyone has a slightly different style. So there's not, a one size fits all. I'm sure, Michelle, if, you and I compared our prompts, even for the same exact request, they might look very different, right? So this is definitely not just a science. There is an art to this that you can, embed your own personality, your own approach into it. So certainly don't feel like there's only one best way to do this. There are, you can bring in who you are into the prompt as well. I can only encourage folks to go onto LinkedIn Learning and other similar, learning platforms and looking for those prompting technique trainings because they're quite everywhere now. And you'll learn tips and tricks along the way. And, this is where also, looking at your network and asking folks, how are they using it, can be very helpful as well. For example, talking to a colleague at Thomson Reuters, she mentioned every time she asks if, AI for some support, she'll end that prompt with, ask me any clarifying questions that you may have. I had never thought to do that, but I started adding that in, and it's completely changed the game for me in my prompting experience as well, and the results that I get, because now I'm having a conversation with our internal chat feature versus it being more one-sided. So part of this is, again, starting off and then talking to your network and seeing how they're using it, so you can pick up on some other creative ways to leverage AI.
Love that. That's great. And Michelle, anything you want to add on to that?
I don't think I do have anything to add. I will steal that additional prompt. Or I was only going to add that I tend to ask it in a few different ways. So we've obviously talked about playing. I ask for options always, give me a few ideas for X, Y, and Z, rather than the kind of ask a direct question, because then you'll get a direct answer, and then it will, if you spit it into your exec report, it will feel like AI. It's harder to add your voice at that point. The LinkedIn Learning and the free tools out there, people are offering that left, right, and center. I would just Google it, the old school AI ChatGPT function. I would Google it and go in and have a go at those. It's an empowering tool. And the conversation comment, Sweta, is perfect. Don't think once you've asked it, that's it. Then go, really? Well, what else could I think about? Start thinking about it as that assistant, the person sat next to you at the desk that isn't there, your imaginary friend. I've just thought about that. But it is, it's real. And ask a few more questions, delve a little bit deeper. Think about it as how you would hold a conversation. Use those good communication skills you probably already have. And steal Sweta's prompt, or your colleague's prompt.
Yeah, Deanna, who asked that question, I think there's a couple sort of tying this up, hearing from both Sweta and Michelle, that LinkedIn is a great resource. I'm going to +1 that. Many of the courses are free. And Sweta, I loved your idea of just maybe posting something on LinkedIn. I mean, most of us seem to have hundreds of connections these days, and you may get some great answers as far as courses around prompting from your own network. So good thought there. Well, we're coming toward the end, and this is a great question that's always fun to hear from our panelists on. And we'll start with you, Michelle, on this one. A lot has changed over the years for all of us, right? Technology is rapidly evolving. But whether you want to answer it that way or not, what advice would you give your younger self?
Be bolder. I am, it's probably a UK phrase, so I apologize. I'm a grafter. I'm a hard worker. I always have been. It doesn't always get the recognition you may hope. We go back to talking about selling yourself, getting better at that. But I would tell myself to be braver. I would tell myself to, the phrase is lean in, go for those career progression opportunities. I still even now find myself going, I'll wait another year or so before I apply for that kind of role progression. And I was recently reminded, and caveat, as a market research advocate, these stats are not validated necessarily, but I believe the general consensus is that 80% of men, those male personalities, apply for jobs they believe they can do 20% of. 20% of women apply for jobs they can do 80% of. So if we ignore the stats, because I was told that once, so if we think about majority and minority, just go for that next role. I think it would be bold and be braver.
Great advice. And those stats are kind of stunning when you think about that for a moment, and what that means for possible opportunities that you might not even be aware of, that you're sort of self-selecting yourself out of the process. Sweta, what about for you? What advice would you give your younger self today?
Yeah, it's actually really similar to what the two of you just touched on, which is, not letting your background, your history, your fears be the reason that you self-select out of an opportunity. I mean, I had this horrible habit of, not applying or reaching out to people in my network or reaching out for opportunities, because I would just think, I was like, there's probably someone better out there for that than this, poor girl from Jersey City in the United States. Maybe you get rejected when you try, but it's probably better to just let the actual decision maker decide if you are selected out or if you're selected in. So, I mean, and the only way you'll really know if you're eligible or capable is if you put yourself out there, and try at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer in looking beyond what somebody's history may be, and I think there's so much opportunity, and people like Sweta are clearly saying, and Michelle, that you got to get in the game in order to be considered, and I love that. So we're almost at time. I just want to give our panelists a chance to share any final reflections as we've had this conversation today, or any other recommendations that we didn't get to. So Michelle, we'll start with you on this one.
So my reflection is to always add to the end of my AI prompts, is there anything else I can clarify? Because I would do that with a human. I would do that with my team. I'd say, is there any questions or concerns? I would, my reflection is that the coach, I love that phrase, Sweta. I thought that was a beautiful thing to think about it as that. I use it as my assistant, definitely, but as my coach too. I think that's a beautiful thing to think about. And a reminder, because we both touched on it, but that intentionality to self-reflect, to audit your skill set, and to purposely then look to grow. Block out that time, make time for yourselves.
Absolutely. Thank you. And great way of summing up some of the themes today. Sweta, what about yourself? Any final reflections?
Michelle kind of talked about Michelle kind of talked about the fact that, she doesn't like using I statements, we statements. I think this is where that can become a superpower, right? How are you individually going to work with yourself and your village, the women around you, to hold each other accountable to leveraging AI in the future, right? And, that can start today. Talk to a few colleagues, talk to a few friends, and ask them, hey, are you using this? Can we work on this together? Can we try some stuff? Can we share some findings? Use LinkedIn to do that as well, and create that community if you don't feel like you've got it yourself. But we can lift each other up on this space, right? If we actually coordinate and just have conversations about it and try individually and try collectively.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This has been fantastic conversation, Sweta and Michelle. I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing this advice. And for all of you who tuned into this discussion, as a reminder, we'll be sending out the recording today. You'll learn also about some opportunities, I hope, at Thomson Reuters. I'll say again, fantastic place to learn. People I met are lifelong friends, and great to work with so many smart people there. I think you got a sense of a couple of them today. So be sure to check out Thomson Reuters' profile on Fairygodboss. We'd also love to hear your feedback to help us improve these sessions for the future. So if you can head over to the Typeform tab on the right side of your screen, you can quickly do a 1-minute survey. We really, really appreciate it. In the meantime, thanks again, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.